Hi. Today we're going to be looking at the obligation to love another person. This is actually what is discussed in the 10th of the 12 passages in the series that we're discussing. The verse says as follows: love your fellow as yourself. Rabbi Akiva says this is the great general principle of the Torah. Now, loving another person is not even in the 10 Commandments, right? We're told believe in God and don't worship idols and a whole host of different things, not taking God's name in vain, etc. We don't find that you have the obligation to love your fellow as yourself in those 10 Commandments. And yet Rabbi Akiva says this is the great general principle of the Torah. Why? Was it not important enough to make it to the Big 10 list? Or is it that it is so fundamental that it kind of underlies everything else? So I want to share a teaching from a story, an incident that is related to us in the Talmud that sheds light on this verse. The approach is a little different, the message subtly different, but certainly very applicable. We are told that a person who was interested in converting went to see Shammai, the great sage, and he asked him, teach me the Torah on one leg, which we generally take to mean, teach it to me very quickly. And Shammai said, I can't do it, leave, get out of here. So this man then went to Shammai's colleague, Hillel, and he asked him the same question, teach me the Torah on one leg. And Hillel answered him as follows. He said, what is hateful to you, what you don't like, don't do to others. This is the entire Torah, and the rest is commentary. Now, one of the ways I was taught to understand this story is that this person's question wasn't just provocative, he wasn't making fun of the rabbis, he wasn't not serious individual. He was asking a very deep question. We are taught that the Torah stands on 3 pillars. Torah, the study of Torah, Avodah, which is divine service, specifically the service of prayer, and Gemilus Chasodim, acts of loving kindness. So this man went to Shammai and Hillel and said, I understand that Jews are very into an intellectual kind of service, study of Torah, heart service, prayer, and then action, and that it should be kindness to others, loving other people. What's the one leg? That's a tripod. What is the one leg on which the entire Torah stands? And Shammai answered, can't take it down any further. But Hillel said, yes, it can all come down to one principle. That one leg has to do with the kindness and the love to others. And how does that manifest? Not do to others what you want them to do to you. That's egocentric projection of ourselves onto other people. Here we're talking about, look, I don't know what you like. If I don't like it, I could assume that you probably don't either, so I'll hold myself back. The Tzemach Tzedek, the third Lubavitcher Rebbe, has a remarkable discourse on love of one's fellow Jew, and he explains this teaching of Hillel. He says, if we don't have things together between ourselves, God's presence cannot enter into the world. Don't do to others what you don't want done to you. There has to be a sense of our collective identity, honoring the other person. But why is this the entire Torah? Because the purpose of the whole Torah is to bring God's presence down into this physical world. Our goal is that God should be manifest, and as we'll discuss next week, find a home here in the physical world for him. We can bring God down. We can generate great lights, the indwelling of the Shekhinah, the feminine presence of God in this world through the mitzvot that we do. every commandment, every good deed brings down a different quality of light. So lighting candles or giving charity or going to the mikveh or educating children or shaking a lulav and etrog, all of these bring down a different kind of light. But God's presence doesn't dwell where there is a blemish. And if we, his people, don't have it together, certainly there's not going to be peace in the world as a whole. And that means God's presence cannot come down into the lowest dimension of reality. Yes, it could travel, we could bring it down through all the different worlds, but when it has to come into the most important place to kind of get onto the landing strip, we're not at one with each other. And therefore Hillel says, this is the whole Torah. If you don't get your love of a fellow Jew together, then you don't have access. You cannot bring the presence down. And then he says the rest is commentary. Why is the rest commentary? Because all of the other mitzvot are just details, separate paths and means to bringing God's presence here into this world. Now, Rabbi Akiva approaches it a little bit differently. He says this is the great fundamental principle of the Torah. He expresses it in the positive, whereas Hillel is saying, don't do to others as you don't want done to you. Rabbi Akiva says, love others as you love yourself. And that this is so important. We could almost not even look at it as a commandment. It is something that is the basis, the vessel, the context in which all the rest of the Torah happens. Now, if we look at those words honestly for a minute, what we see is that it seems quite impossible. Love your fellow as yourself. Is that really possible? And our sages have asked this and debated it. How is it possible to love another person the way you love yourself when self-love is innate and love for another human being is acquired? And therefore we have found different kinds of answers through the generations. So for example, the Ramban says it's not possible. You cannot truly love someone the way you love yourself. And various sages answer what that then means in different ways. Conduct yourself towards them as you would conduct yourself towards yourself. V'ahavta et asher l'reacha kamecha. Love that which belongs to your fellow as yourself. Quite difficult to do, to take care of another person's possessions the way you would take care of your own possessions. Then we have the Baal Shem Tov. The Baal Shem Tov comes along with a great innovation and he says, I don't care what the challenge is. You have to love someone who is great, the highest, most lofty individual, with the same kind of love and dignity and honor you have to bestow on the most low of individuals. Don't make any distinctions between great and small. That is a huge step. And then comes the Alter Rebbe. And the Alter Rebbe in Tanya says, I'm not interested, big or small. There can be no distinctions, one between the other. Our people are one. There's no such thing as a great Jew or a lowly Jew. The way a person manifests is not relevant apropos the core identity, who they are, and what's my real connection with that person. We can ask ourselves who is right, and I would venture to say each one was right. Each one in their generation at their time. So maybe in the times of the Ramban, this kind of letting go of my sense of self as an individual and being collectively connected to the Jewish people was not possible. The Baal Shem Tov lived in a time where it was possible to break through that, and yet there were still distinctions between one and another. Then came the Alter Rebbe and he says, no, for now and going forward, there are no distinctions. And how are we to be able to bring that in, bring it, bind it into our hearts? He gives us a meditation. At the level of the body, we are separate one from the other. When you look at another person, you can't both occupy the same physical space. But at the level of our soul, not only are we connected one with the other, but we really are the same thing. It's almost, if you could think of a seed that grows into a tree, and now that tree has many different branches and twigs and leaves and petals and fruits, but ultimately all of that, think of it as an upside down tree, traces its way back to the roots above. And so too our people. There's someone living in one country, another country, two people in one household. It doesn't matter. All of us ultimately, when we divest ourselves of the external identity of the body, find we come closer and closer to each other until what we realize is, I am you and you are me. At the deepest level, we are each other. And that's why the Alter Rebbe says it's possible to love another person as we love ourselves. I can love you as I love me when I pierce through that false thinking. I break it apart and I get it, finally. It's not that I'm loving you, someone outside of me. Yes, love for another is acquired and self-love is innate. But really, any other person at their deepest level is so bound with me that we are one. And so loving you is truly loving me. So if you look in chapter 32 of Tanya, and I highly recommend that you do, you'll find a remarkable line from the Rebbe that kind of sums up everything that we've been saying. He says as follows: if your body is of primary importance to you, more important to you than your soul, you will never be able to love another person fully. If your soul is more important to you than your body, then you have access to true love of another person. And we understand it. At the level of the body, we are separate entities. So when I'm concerned about how I look and I compare myself to another person, when taking care of my own physical needs are more important, or even just that I associate who I am with this physical thing, I'm automatically separating myself from the other. In order to bond deeply with another person, I have to be able to divest myself of that garment, the garment of the body, connect with the soul, and at that level, we are each other. Yes, it's counterintuitive because even at that level, we each have our own unique identity. We never give that up. That's your soul print. However, there is this place where all of us are one. We have to be able to get to it in our mind, in our awareness, in order to be able to manifest that love for each other here on earth. And we have to do that because without that, we don't have this great underlying principle that allows all the other mitzvahs of the Torah to begin to be effective in bringing Mashiach.